Hey miners, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, Anthony Power and I are going to be talking about the recent price action over the weekend in terms of Bitcoin, the miners pulling back in a big way this morning as we've seen on a number of Mondays in recent memory, and of course miner growth targets heading into the last few months of 2024. So there's a lot to talk about in today's video. Before we get into all that, please take a second, you guys, smash that like button faster than a 2-cent PPA. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below how you're feeling in terms of the price of Bitcoin, where the miner shares are trading, and your forecast for the last half of 2024. Now with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Anthony Power and I are back in action Monday morning. A lot going on over the weekend, Anthony. We're going to be dissecting in today's video, but lo and behold, you've called it again, Anthony. We were rallying all weekend. Bitcoin was looking very strong, and now we have a Monday morning pullback, just like we've seen over the last few weeks. So I wanted to get your take first and foremost on that. Then we'll get into some of the developments over the weekend that was really pushing that Bitcoin momentum and some upcoming catalysts and discussion points, I guess, for the week ahead. So Anthony, how was your weekend? How are you feeling today? And how do you think the miners are looking this week?
Yeah, it's a good weekend. We're still on holiday actually in the UK. It's a bank holiday today, so the markets in the UK aren't open. But yeah, you're right. The Bitcoin price held from sort of like Friday close all the way through Friday and Saturday. Even touched 65,000 yesterday, but it's dropped back today again. But on the Spaces meeting last night with A-Trade and Bitcoin Mining Guy, there's a few of the technical guys on there, like Freedom by 40 and A-Trade. Obviously, there's a lot of technical analysis, and they were suggesting that maybe there's a little bit of a pullback, not a big pullback, but a small pullback before we go further higher. So it looks like we're just in that sort of boundary there between that sort of 56, 65, and we'll hope that we get a push on in the next week or so.
It reminds me of the John Mayer song, Waiting on the World to Change here, Anthony. All these factors, if you look on the screen, you guys will show up a few graphs here really talking about this cyclicality we've seen in the Bitcoin 4-year cycles over the last few halvings. So you can see from Crypto Rover here, looking very similar. I've seen a lot of tweets, Anthony, saying history rhymes over the weekend. A lot of people really saying this cycle is playing out very similar to where they expected. Freedom by 40 you brought up, he's noted that he doesn't expect this to be as big a run as a lot of the bulls out there. But we have a lot of very notable people, including Michael Saylor, coming out with very aggressive Bitcoin targets for year-end 2024. The other factor here, Anthony, is this is an election year. So Crypto Rover put up a great chart talking about Bitcoin price response to election cycles as well. And it really does look like that's starting to follow suit. Now, you mentioned Bitcoin rallying Friday, Saturday into the weekend there. That's really because, or in part because, some big political moves in the state. So we're not going to dwell on this a lot today, Anthony, but RFK Jr., who was actually present in Nashville, we saw one of his speeches. He was the first presidential campaign ever to come out with the idea of a Bitcoin strategic reserve. He's now put his support behind Donald Trump and said he'll be actively campaigning on behalf of Trump. So we now have the two presidential candidates that were really pro-Bitcoin. They've joined forces here, teamed up, and people are thinking that may be enough to upset Kamala and the party that really at this point doesn't have a lot of Bitcoin platforming or planning strategy as part of their campaign. So curious to get your thoughts on that, Anthony. Obviously, you and I don't live in the States. We don't have a say in the election itself, but it is starting to impact the Bitcoin and macroeconomic markets as well.
Well, we're both in Nashville for listening to both those speeches by RFK and Trump, and I felt the speech by RFK was more passionate, more understanding of Bitcoin. I mean, he highlighted in his speech that he put 85% of his wealth into Bitcoin, which really surprised me because I've got nowhere near that in my portfolio. So he's more orange pilled than I am. But it was great to hear. And then we had, I think everyone's anticipating, Donald Trump with his speech, and he gave a good speech. So, it's an interesting move. RFK realizes he's not going to be able to, get the seat in the White House on his own. So he's now determined now to make sure that the right person gets there. And he's put his full support behind Donald Trump. So that's an interesting move and probably I would say a fairly predictable move as well. So it holds it in good stead for the election because we know that 40, 50 million Americans actually hold some form of crypto and therefore, is going to be one of the political talking points. And fortunately, we've got a great podcast coming up this week where we've got a certain Dennis Porter coming on the channel. So maybe highlight a bit more about that, Bryce.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Dennis Porter, he's on tomorrow, so that's going to be a really interesting one to watch. He started, co-founded, and CEO of Satoshi Action Fund, which really lobbies and advocates for Bitcoin, freedom of speech, blockchain technology, all the rest. He posted a tweet immediately with a picture of him and RFK from Nashville, I believe, talking about his support for RFK and the fact that he was really a pioneer in the Bitcoin space. So great to see a number of different political people getting involved in this space, bringing up Bitcoin, creating this as a platform, talking point, as you say, in this upcoming election, Anthony. And although we don't know the outcome, I think for everyone in the Bitcoin space, just the visibility, the fact that this is now being discussed on this type of level or platform is obviously bullish for not only adoption, but also Bitcoin price and the miners. Now, if we fast forward to the miners, Anthony, and unfortunately, A-Trades has also noticed this pattern that you bring up about the Monday dumps. Him and I were betting an Aquapana or maybe a case of Aquapanas on a Monday pullback. It looks at this point in the day like he's right. Why do you think we're seeing this, Anthony? We saw a stronger Bitcoin price this morning than where we closed on Friday. We obviously see a lot of excitement and energy in the Bitcoin community, but the miners just continue to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Yeah, we can't control the Bitcoin price. We know that 70% of the people that hold Bitcoin haven't moved it in the last 2 years. So that's a good statistic that, the majority of people aren't interested in selling it or actually moving it at all. So, but that other 30%, creates this volatility that we've got. So, there are ETFs buying, there are ETFs selling Bitcoin. Had a great first 6 months since the ETFs got approved, but we've noticed in this last sort of maybe month and a half that there has been probably a few more selling days in terms of outflows from these funds. And so, really, we're just waiting for the next pickup. We don't think there's as many retail investors coming into the market. We think a lot of the institutions are sort of like in and moving around. But go back to that comment I made on previous podcasts about predictability, and Bitcoin just isn't predictable, to any certain extent on a day-to-day basis. You've got to sort of zoom out a little bit and take a step back because it can move these sort of percentages, and the miners are just a proxy for Bitcoin and move even more volatile to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin might drop 1%, but the miners might drop 5 to 10%, and so we just have to. That's an acceptance of where we are, and that's why you see a lot of these mining companies looking for other revenue streams to help them through these volatile periods and the bear cycles that that have happened over the last 4 cycles. I mean, inevitably, people are saying we do follow a pattern, and yes, there is a pattern, and there's now a potential at the start of the bull market, but we know that there's been 3 bear cycles as well in the past, and we'll end up going through another bear cycle. So people, have to be wary of that. And these mining stocks can move massively in one day. We've seen stocks move 50+% in one day. The Bitcoin price isn't as volatile. I mean, if it moves up 5 or 6% in a day, that's a massive move. It's not many days in a month it moves that amount. Generally, anything up to 3%. But anything moving bigger than that, there's got to be probably a news story attached to it. For some positive news or equally some negative news that comes in. with like maybe a war going on around the world can impact not just Bitcoin, but the macroeconomics, and that therefore impacts Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, it certainly does. So, with all these factors going on in the background, Anthony, where do you see Bitcoin and the miners moving from here? It feels like we've been consolidating really since about Christmas now for quite some time. Bitcoin's been fairly range bound. We have seen some life in the Bitcoin mining sector itself due to this HPC megawatt interest from all these hyperscalers. Do you think we're just waiting now for that next leg up, Anthony, or do you think this may be a longer term consolidation here?
No, I think we're waiting for the next leg up. I really do. I think this last sort of 4 or 5 months of the year, we'll see some increases, and hopefully we get to achieve anywhere near some of these targets that these technical analysis have come out with, and then you've got the really bullish analysis like Kathy Wood from the ARK Investments, and also from Michael Saylor, who's a Bitcoin maximalist number one, maximalist number one there on the list. Like so, they're very 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 bullish. But even the guys last night on Spaces were coming out their technical analysis, and they expect six figures by the end of the year, and a few of them were saying, that it could go up quite considerably day by day without any real other reason, the fact that we're in a bull cycle. So that was interesting. We've seen some of that as well in 2021 when the bull cycle there. It was a frenzy for quite a few months, as each day was like a really good day, and we saw the price of Bitcoin rise, and we saw the mining stocks really doing well. And we're waiting for that time again now. We haven't seen the rising stocks rise as much this year in terms of what the Bitcoin price has done, but we know that an increase in Bitcoin price, certainly if it gets above the all-time high, we'll see these mining stocks rally, all of them as well, not just a few of them, all of them will rally, because that's where it needs to be. The Bitcoin price needs to be higher because it needs to give these miners more of a margin to then have profits in the next quarter.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And as they say, rising tide lifts all boats. So, in addition to all this information, news, excitement going on in the media, Anthony, we've had quite a bit of excitement and news internally within Power Mining here. So, we've been working on a number of kind of behind the scenes things we're excited to bring to you guys over the next few months. One of those, Anthony, is we were actually invited to be speakers in Amsterdam. So, we're going to be heading out there October 9th and 10th, you guys, taking place in the first half of October. Really going to be a great opportunity to meet some of our subscribers on your side of the pond, Anthony, in Europe there rather than in North America. So maybe you can just give a quick summary of the plan there.
Yeah, no, it's a great conference to go. So I was fortunate to go last year, and I went last year as a speaker at the conference. So I was actually not hosting or moderating the panel. I was actually on the panel speaking, along with Nazar Khan of TeraWulf, and with Aidan Killick, of Hive Digital, CEO of Hive Digital, and moderated by Amanda Fabiano, who actually is a director now of TeraWulf now, and has her own consulting business in the space. I mean, she's got a vast amount of experience in the Bitcoin mining space. But I was great to be on as a speaker last year. We're not quite sure what panels will be on this year, whether we're actually hosting or being part of a panel. That news will come out shortly, and we'll make sure we update people. But the actual event is a really good event. I mean, Amsterdam's a great city anyway. It's, if you haven't been to Amsterdam, I would recommend it. I did live in Holland for 3 years when I served in the military. And although I wasn't based in Amsterdam, I used to go to Amsterdam with quite regularity, because Holland's not a massive country in terms of traveling from location to location. So it's not like you're in the States where you'd be traveling 2 days and you're still in the same state. In Europe, you can travel 2 days and you've been in another continent. So it's like, but Amsterdam's it's got a lot of history there. A lot of museums. I mean, there must be about 80 museums in Amsterdam itself. It's got all the canals there. I think it's the second largest beer supplier in the world, Heineken. So that's a Dutch beer. And everyone knows Heineken because it's a global beer. There's only one beer ahead of that. And so, and everyone rides bicycles over there in Amsterdam. So, this is, 9 million bicycles in the city or whatever. So, and it's got a really, it's a great place to be. I enjoyed my time last year. I was there for about 4 or 5 days. We're going there for a little bit longer this time so we can see a bit more of the sites, do a couple of podcasts while we're there. So, looking forward to it. And I got to meet a lot of people last year who actually, were following my information I've been providing on Twitter because I hadn't really set up power mining analysis by that. That came after Amsterdam. The sort of the idea probably formulated whilst I was in Amsterdam, but it sort of carried on. And by the end of October, I had a plan of how to take it forward. And in January, we actually, commenced. So in a very short period of time last year, we got to where we are now. But yeah, looking forward to going back there. Looking forward to catching up with some of the same people that were there last year. It's a nice event in terms of where it's located, and plenty of the big stage there, lots of seating. So don't worry about you're going to get seats at this one. There's a lot of seating there, so you'll get seats. I got to sit and watch um, a lot of the other speakers last year. I didn't get to see as much at Nashville this time. I think we were doing so much at Nashville that didn't
Sure.
get as much chance to see some of the speakers that I would have liked to have done. But at Amsterdam last year, I sat and watched probably about a dozen other panels and get a real feel. There's a lot of good panels. We had Ben Gagnon last year, Sam Tabar. We had Frank Holmes on the stage. It was
Anthony,
great.
I'll tell you, I'm not even too worried about the seating. When you say they have beer, bicycles, and Bitcoin, you got me with
All you
those
need.
three, buddy. Those
All
are
you
three of
need.
my top interests in the world. Now, in
Yeah.
addition to that, you guys, Anthony and I also got a discount code. So if you are going to stop by, we get 10% off the purchase price. But we are going to be hosting a meetup there, so we'd love to have you guys. And as Anthony says, super cool city, very interesting venue, and a good opportunity for maybe those who aren't able to make it to North America. So that's going to be super fun, Anthony. We're also working on a couple things in terms of our website development and podcast improvements. So we'll keep you guys posted there. But as we always say, no shortage of news, no shortage of activity in the Bitcoin mining space. And Anthony, based on your comments there, it sounds like we're waiting in the wings, and it's just a matter of time now until these miners start rocking. Hey.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've certainly seen movement with regards to those miners that have got HPC interest. So if we go back over the last 3 months and look at how miners performed, it's quite clear, absolutely clear. And we'll put a visual on the actual on this podcast to highlight that. But if you look at the likes of Core Scientific, they've increased by 270 percent, and you've got the likes of TeraWulf well over 100%. You've got Bit Digital, you've got Hive Digital, you've got Hut 8, all increasing significantly. And then you've got the companies that haven't done as well. So the companies haven't even increased in the last 3 months. So you've got some that are actually in negative territory. So you've got the likes of CleanSpark, which is actually in the last 3 months the worst performing Bitcoin mining stock, followed by Riot, followed by Marathon. So those three stocks there, they're the pure play miners, and they've come out categorically and said they're not going to go down the HPC route. Bitfarms is the only one that's booked the trend on there, and they've sort of like, although they haven't said we're definitely setting up, well, they've more like said we're keeping a watching eye. So I think you might see something from Bitfarms and from Ben now that they've bought Stronghold Mining, which will go through, that purchase will go through in the next 6 months. It might give them an opportunity in certain areas to look at the HPC more directly now and start thinking about how they can plan for that, because all it takes now is one more big update from a miner, similar to like the terms that Core Scientific released in the last 2 or 3 months with their deal with CoreWeave. If we get a company like, I don't know, say like TeraWulf make a big announcement, because if you notice, some of these miners aren't focusing on Bitcoin mining next year in terms of growing their hash rate. They're going to keep the hash rate, so keep mining, but looks like they're fully focusing their strategy on developing HPC because of that predictability of the revenues. I think everybody wants a CoreWeave deal. They all want it. Even the pure play miners would want a CoreWeave deal. Of course they would. Why wouldn't they?
I wanted to ask you two questions there, Anthony. So number one is, do you think the CoreWeave deal was a unicorn? Do you think other miners, we talk about a second big hyperscaler coming into the space to galvanize that thesis. Do you think that's even possible?
I think there's another deal out there, and I think there's more deals out there. And having spoken to some of these CEOs in Nashville and on the podcast, if you remember, we've asked a lot of these, how much has the phone been ringing in regards to HPC? It's all about HPC. All the conversations are about HPC. The other benefit is if any of these companies do get a HPC type contract of significant size, then the banks are going to let them borrow against that deal. They're not going to let them borrow against Bitcoin mining because the interest rate would be ridiculous. We saw that in 2021, 2022. Some of these miners were growing their Bitcoin mining hash rate and paying 17, 18, 19%. I remember Bitfarms paying 18, 19% some of the debt they had on their balance sheet. We've just seen Core Scientific go to the market with, and achieve $460 million, 7 months after coming out of Chapter 11 and an interest rate of 3%. Now,
3%.
let that one just sink in a little bit for a second. They had debt on their balance sheet totaling close to 300 million. I think it's 270 million, which they've now replaced. So that 270 million of old debt was at a rate of about 12.5%. So they've managed to pay all that off, and they've still got cash on the balance sheet, a little bit of cash left over, which will help them should any further opportunities come or to deliver, that the infrastructure that the contract with CoreWeave requires. But
That's a great
460
point, though,
million.
Anthony. Yeah, just the interest rate differences alone of having that guaranteed revenue. Now, one other piece there you brought up, Anthony, you talk about some of these year-end targets. So we've got the pure play miners, like you just mentioned, the CleanSpark, the Riot, the Marathon. Yes, they've been underperforming. However, the conversation is HPC right now, and they have shown no interest in HPC. So that makes sense. They're still driving towards those huge aggressive targets we saw at the start of the year. But on the other end of the spectrum, we're seeing some of the smaller miners like Digital, for example, and Gryphon saying, hey, you know what? We're going to just pause on our exahash growth for now. And we're going to focus on where the puck is, so to speak, on the HPC opportunity. Do you think this is going to dramatically impact some of the larger miners' targets this year, or do you think they're still on track for those?
Well, on track. So who we got out there? We've got sort of five, the big five I call them now, because the ones that are growing literally, anything above 25 exahash and above is considerable. And so let's look at one by one. So you've got Marathon Digital currently operating just over 31 exahash. They've got a target of 50 by the end of the year. They haven't changed that target. So we're going to have to be seeing somewhere in the region of 4 or 5 exahash on their monthly update for the next 4 or 5 months to get there. I think that could be a challenge for them. Remember when they had the target of 23 exahash, which took a year longer than they originally forecast. They are big enough to do it, but are the sites out there that they can buy? I'm assuming they've got the machine orders in place, but it's a case of getting the facilities to grow that. Now, what they could do is they could replace some of their older machines in some of these facilities with the latest S21 Pros, and therefore you can literally increase your hash rate on those machines like over 100% in one movement by switching the machine over. So they'll do a lot of that there, but I don't think that gets them to 50. I think they've still got to find some more facilities. And so we need to see some more updates for them to do that. So just under 20 exahash in the last 4 months. That's a big ask.
So you'd rate that one a question mark, we'd say.
I'd question that one question mark on whether they'll achieve that.
Sure. Okay.
Then
And
you've got Bitfarms. So Bitfarms have got a target of 21. Now I'm assuming that target of 21 stays without the impact of the new purchase of Stronghold. And bear in mind, it looks like that Stronghold deal will be finalized in 2025 anyway, so they can't start including that exahash in their monthly update until that deal's finalized. That wouldn't be right. So They still got to get to 21. Now, at the moment, they're around about 11.1 in terms of what's actually installed. Their hash rate target for June the 30th was 12, so they haven't quite got to 12 yet, and we're sort of heading towards the end of August. That's 2 months delayed there. They were close to getting to 12, and they got, oh, well, I think it was 11.4, so they're just short of the 12, which we gave them a bit of leeway for that way. But in July, the sort of hash rate dropped because they had some issues with some of their sites. We need to see some sort of like, again, big numbers coming through month by month as some of these facilities start, powering up and going online. So they've got to get, another effectively 10 exahash plugged in the next 4 months. Now, 10
Essentially
exahash.
doubling their
When you're at 11, it's 10x to say a big mine like Marathon might be well within their remit, but Bitfarms are a smaller miner than Marathon, and so they literally have to close to double their hash rate from now. Now it's took them 4 years, well, it's took them nearly 7 years to get to 10 point or 11.1, and they've got to get another 10. Now I think they can. I think Ben's been on twice now and said that hash rate will be achieved. So, let's put a tick to say we expect them to achieve that hash rate, but we need to see that 12 plus hash rate by the end of August. Now we need to see something to say that's going to grow, and the focus is on getting that hash rate target in there. So that's them out the way. Next, we've got Riot Platforms. Now, just for everyone's confirmation, because I must have said it once, twice, 15 times. Riot have struggled over the last 2 years. There's no doubt about it. From December 2022 all the way up to within about 2 months ago, their monthly updates have not been anything above, they've been less than average every month, to be honest with you. They had a couple of good months where they were selling power and they were able to get some really nice credits from the ERCOT. But even then, you could sort of like on some of those months, you could say, well, if you'd have kept the machines on and mined Bitcoin, you might have actually got more revenue. So there's question marks about that. They do have effectively cheaper energy because of the strategy they've been using with regards to energy, because these credits come back in the form of reducing your energy bill. So there is some positives there, but believe you me, I've sort of cringed quite a bit when I get the updates from Riot because I'm expecting so much more. Now in June, we were fortunate to go and visit Corsicana, so it's a bit different when you're sat behind a desk on a podcast, 4 or 5 thousand miles away from where some of these operations are going without having been to one. But when you get the chance to go to a mining facility, it sort of like opens your mind up to what's actually going on. And we were very, very, surprised at how things were moving there. And we had a great tour and everything was explained to us about the growth. And believe you me, we were there with 20 other Wall Street analysts. And I asked, I don't know, more questions than everybody had together, I think, because I wanted to leave that place knowing everything. And so, I was constantly asking more and more and more information while I was there.
Well, and I
And
think just to throw in, Anthony, I think seeing is believing, right? And for you and
yeah,
me both, we talked to Jason and Benny and those guys before we got there. We were asking a lot of questions just out of excitement, similar to with Coors and Denton and all the rest. And all of them, everyone from Riot that I met said, "Don't worry, just wait till tomorrow. You'll see. You'll see.
yeah.
You'll see." That was the thing. So I got to tell you, Anthony, when we pulled up on that coach, we saw firsthand, and my opinion on Riot definitely changed in that moment.
Mine did as well. And I'll say 100% achieved for them. I'll tick that box now. We've just seen more photographs that they've released this week showing what building B1 and the start of the building for B2, which is their final building that they've got to provide for this year. So effectively now it looks like they've got, 200 megawatts fully operational. The third 100 megawatts looks like it's about to be energized. And then they've just got this final piece of the jigsaw, which is another 100 megawatts. And that looks like they've got time to do that. And their teams down there are working 24/7, so they're on shift patterns there. There's over 500 staff in Corsicana. We could physically see the guys working, and delivering, and it's all immersion cooling. So they're really pleased with that there. And so again, we need to see these, we've got to start seeing these big updates. I think, they've got to get to 36 by the end of the year. Now, 31.5 was their target before they purchased block mining. And block mining provided them with about 60 megawatts, but there's the potential to grow that to 100 megawatts. And they've said they'll get 100 megawatts on that site by the end of the year, filled with miners as well. So they've actually got a two-pronged attack to get to this 36 exahash. They've also got Rockdale, which they'll be doing, similar to what I explained, what Marathon will be doing in some of their facilities. They'll be replacing the older, well, not the older, the inefficient mining machines. So they had quite a big batch of S19 XPs that just weren't performing anywhere near where they should be. And this can happen with batches of miners. They're not the only company to come out and say they've had issues with them. We've seen even Bitfarms having to send miners back to Bitmain and get them replaced, and other mining companies have done exactly the same. So it's not totally unusual that you have some teething problems, but the teething problems at Rockdale were effectively 4 exahash. I mean, that's the size of a mid-tier miner. So, that sort of explains why some of these updates were nowhere near where they should be. Now, I'm hoping that with the new micro BT machines that are going to go into that facility at Rockdale and replace that 4 exahash, and bear in mind, micro BT are making machines purpose built for Riot now. So these machines that will go into immersion cooling are purpose built for immersion cooling. There's no change have to be made to the mining machine. They can go straight into the fluid and be energized, whereas other companies would have to take each mining machine and take away all the parts that they don't need for immersion cooling before they put them into the actual fluid itself. So that's going to save Riot a lot of time and space, and obviously probably a lot of cost as well, because there's parts of the miners that you don't need. So I'd expect the immersion cooled miners would be actually cheaper to produce, not massively, but slightly cheaper.
Yeah, and after that episode, we just aired on the weekend here a special on immersion cooling from Rousseau. They're actually partnered with a number of these miners to help strategize, design, build, implement these immersion data centers. We learned a ton in that interview, but Daniel Koff, who's the co-founder and COO, he spoke immensely about immersion, the benefits to the life expectancy of these machines, having fully depreciated machines that are still hashing, and the fact that you're now able to overclock. So they had some figures of the M66 where they were overclocking, I think, around 40% on a continual basis. So you talk, Anthony, about upgrading these fleets. You start swapping out 31 joule per terahash machines for 15, plus you start overclocking. You can see where all of a sudden the size of these data centers doesn't need to grow anymore. They just need to become more dense in terms of compute. So a lot going on in the space. Exciting week coming up here as well, Anthony, in terms of the Bitcoin price and the miner moves. So I'll kick it back to you for kind of your forward-looking thoughts here, but no shortage of developments to kick off Monday morning.
No, and as I say, we can't control Bitcoin price, and the volatility will affect miners either way. So I just these days, I just take a step back and just focus on what you can focus on, and doing other stuff. Trying to produce good content for everybody. But yeah, the video with Daniel that came out yesterday was a really good educational one. One thing that has disappointed me over the sort of last couple of years is we haven't really seen any data to support anything in the immersion cooling space. So we know there are miners out there that use immersion cooling, significant amounts of immersion cooling, not just a couple of megawatts, but Riot had 200 megawatts of immersion cooling at their Rockdale facility. Now, we know that was out of action for 13 months because they had the weather issues back in December 2022, so we weren't going to get too much data from them, but we've had Argo operating in the Helios site for the last a couple of years now. So they energized in May 2022. So not seeing any data from that, and it's not Argo's facility anymore now. It's Galaxy's, and we don't see too much updates from Galaxy in terms of Bitcoin mining. I mean, they are a Bitcoin miner, but it represents about 10% of the company size. I mean, they do a lot more things. They have a an exchange and do a lot more things than self-mining. So they don't produce that many updates out there. Yeah, it's just take a step back on days like this, and we'll wait for the next push up. This next 3 or 4 months is going to be really interesting, and it should be good for the not just for Bitcoin price, but for the miners to start moving up there. But we need this price action on Bitcoin because it's all correlated to that there, and yeah, hopefully we'll see that movement soon.
Definitely is. I saw a tweet over the weekend saying the bull cycle generally starts 100 to 150 days after halving, and I think we're on day 127 or 128. So we're right in the sweet spot here, Anthony. We will be here daily, you guys, to keep you posted as we start to see Bitcoin moving and the miners reporting news, events, earnings, all the rest. If you're still watching the program at this point, feel free to hit the like button, you guys. Subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions for myself, Anthony, any ideas for interviews or video topics, make sure you drop those in the comment section below, and we'll see you guys here tomorrow.